Hey there, so today we're going to learn how to multiply decimals. Let's go and highlight our learning target here so I can multiply positive and negative decimals. You should already know how to multiply positive decimals, so we're just going to recap how to do that, and then we'll talk about how to decide if our answer is positive or negative, because in 7th grade your biggest difference is that I give you positive and negative decimals, so you have to decide the sign of your answer. Make sure you are following along with your notes that I have provided for you. This first bullet point, we're just going to highlight these as we read them together. So the first bullet point says, ignore the decimal and set up the multiplication problem with the longest number on top. So by longest number, I don't mean biggest number. I mean the longest number, so the number with the most digits. Okay, your second one says to multiply just like you would with integers, so multiply like normal. Then from here, this talks about where to put your decimal. So to place the decimal point in the final answer, count the number of decimals in each factor, add together, and then count over that many places from right to left. And we'll do some examples of what I mean by that. Okay, a couple of hints for you. Please do not line up your decimal points to multiply. That's just, it will give you the same answer, but it is just more work that you don't have to do. Also, do not add any zeros. You don't need to add zeros. Okay, a couple more things. Remember the rules for multiplying positive and negative numbers, and I will remind you of those in a second. And then last thing, always estimate to double check to make sure your answer is reasonable. So if I'm doing like 2 times 3, we should know that that answer is 6. So if you get 60 or 600 because your decimal's in the wrong spot, make sure you fix that. Okay, so over on the right hand side, let's just make a note on here with our rules for how to multiply and divide. So on the side, go ahead and write multiply and divide rules. Okay, and when you guys are multiplying and dividing, the rules you follow to multiply and divide decimals is the same rules that we've been doing to multiply and divide integers. It's the exact same rules. So the rules we have when you're multiplying and dividing integers is if they have the same sign, so go ahead and write same sign. When they have the same sign, your answer is positive. Okay, so if your two numbers have the same sign, meaning it's a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative, if they have the same sign, your answer is always going to be positive. And then if you have different signs, so go ahead and write different signs. So if you have different signs, your answer is negative. All right, so if you're doing a positive times a negative or a negative times a positive, every time the signs are different, your answer is going to be negative. And this is a big misconception because a lot of times people say, oh, my answer's negative because the bigger number's negative. It doesn't matter which number's bigger. If the signs are different, your answer will always be negative no matter which number is bigger. Okay, and then another thing that we had said when we learned about multiplying integers and dividing integers was our little tic-tac-toe trick. So we haven't used it a ton, but let's go ahead and put our little trick underneath these rules that we wrote there, just so if you want to use this tic-tac-toe trick, you can. Okay, so our trick here, go ahead and draw a tic-tac-toe board, and on the diagonal, put pluses to represent positive numbers, and then put negatives to represent negative numbers. And I'll remind you how to read this tic-tac-toe board to help you determine the sign of your answer when you have positive and negative numbers. Okay, so these first 2 columns here are the sign of your numbers. And then this column is the sign of your answer. Okay, and this would be a good thing just to kind of jot down and just have this just maybe on a Post-it next to you while you're working on your homework, while you're doing your notes, just have this somewhere to the side. That way you can glance back at it. So what this is saying is if you have a positive times a negative, your answer is negative. If you have a negative times a positive, your answer is negative. And if you have a negative times a negative, your answer is positive. Okay, so these first 2 columns represent the signs of your first number would be here, the sign of your second number would be there, and then this last column represents the sign of your final answer. Okay, so I would put this on a Post-it, have it nearby, just so you could use it to help you determine the signs of your answers. All right, so we're going to do 2 of these together, and then I'll have you try 2 of them on your own. So for this first example, you have 7 times 1/10. So when you're multiplying it, like we read, you always want to have your longest number on top. Okay, this number has 1 digit. This number has 2 digits. So I'm going to put the 1/10 on top. So I'm going to put 1/10 on top, and then I'm going to multiply by 7. Please notice when I'm multiplying by 7, notice where my 7 goes. My 7 goes underneath the 1. Do not put it under the 0 and try to line up decimals. Just put it underneath the 1. Okay, from here I'm just going to multiply. So what you do is you look at the 7 and you multiply. 7 times 1 is 7. 7 times 0 is 0. And then to determine where your decimal goes, you count how many numbers are behind the decimal. In this case, there's 1. So from the right, you move over 1 spot to the left, and your decimal is going to go right here between the 0 and the 7. And then always check the sign of your answer. A positive times a positive just stays as a positive. So final answer, I need 7/10 or 0.7. And then a side note, anytime your number does not have a whole number, always put the 0 there. So you could put just 0.7, but to have your best answer, make sure you keep that 0 there. All right, let's try another one. So let's take a look at question number 2. So it's a -2 and 4/10 and a -1 and 8/10. I need you to multiply it. So when you're multiplying, put your longer number on top. This is 2 digits, this is 2 digits, so it doesn't really matter which number you put on top because they're both the same amount of digits. Anytime that happens, I'm just going to put the first number on top and then the second number on the bottom. So these decimals already do line up, but remember, you do not need your decimals to line up. They don't have to. All right, so let me remind you guys how to multiply when you have 2 integers in this second number right here. So when you're multiplying, you start by multiplying 8. So 8 times 4 is 32. There's the 2, carry the 3. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 plus 3 is 19. There's my 19. Okay. When you do this second number right here, you have to put a placeholder under the 2, and then you can multiply this 1 right there. Okay, so we're doing 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 2 is 2. And then we add that together. So let me just remind you where these two rows come from. This row that I'm highlighting yellow is everything from multiplying the 8. This row that I'm highlighting orange is everything from multiplying the 1. Okay, then we just add this together. So 2 plus 0 is 2. 9 plus 4 is 3. Carry the, 9 plus 4 is 13. There's the 3, carry the 1. 2 plus 1 plus 1 gives you 4. Okay. My final answer is not 432, and we know that because this is 2, and this rounds to, it's 1.8, so this would round to 2. 2 times 2 would give us 4, not 400 something. So figure out where your decimal goes. You have 2 numbers behind the decimal in your problem. So take your decimal, move it 2 times to the left, so it goes between the 4 and the 32. Okay, so your final answer is 4 and 32 hundredths, and then check the sign of your answer. This is negative times negative, so my answer is going to stay positive. And let me remind you how to use this tic-tac-toe chart. Negative times negative turns positive. So my final answer should be a positive 4 and 32 hundredths. All right, so let's make sure you have that. Go ahead and make sure all your work is shown for that question. I'm going to set up your next one for you, and then I'll have you guys finish it up by yourself. So take a look at this third one. It's negative 3 and 84 hundredths times 9/10. Again, your longest number goes on top. And notice when I've been multiplying these, especially for this second example right here, when I multiplied these, I ignored the negatives, and I didn't worry about the negatives until I figured out that this was positive for my final answer. So ignore the negatives until the very end when you have to determine the sign of your answer. So same thing here. Ignore the negative. I want the longest number on top. This number has 3 digits. This number has 2 digits, so I'm going to put the 3.84 on top. So on top, let's put 3.84. Underneath it, I need a 0.9. Okay, I'll help you with your multiplying for this, and I'll have you guys figure out your final answer with where the decimal goes and positive and negative and all that stuff. So first thing I need you to do is multiply all these numbers by 9. So 4 times 9 is 36. Here's the 6, carry the 3. 8 times 9 is 72. 72 plus 3 is 75. And then 3 times 9 is 27. 27 plus 7 gives you 34. Okay, so you got 34. All right, and then from here, so you guys do have an extra 0 here. And if you want to, you could put a placeholder and then start multiplying. But when you do 0 times 4, you're going to get 0. 0 times 8, you're going to get 0. And 0 times 3, you're also going to get 0. So this would really just be an entire row of zeros. So you'd be adding a bunch of zeros onto the end of this. And adding 0 to anything doesn't really change it. So if you have a 0 as one of your digits down here, if it's the last digit you have to multiply, then I wouldn't even multiply it. If you had another digit here, like if it was like 10.9, then I would put that extra row of zeros. But since this is the last digit we would have to multiply down there, I'm not going to bother doing it. Okay, or you can and just put plus and then add a row of zeros, add it all up, and you still get 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, from here, what I want you to do is decide how many times, like where does your decimal go? And to help you with that, I'm going to underline how many numbers are behind the decimal in your problem. So move your decimal point that many places to the left. So let's first determine how many times you have to move your decimal in this problem. All right, so as you notice, you have 2 numbers behind the decimal here, 1 number behind the decimal here. So you're going to have to move your decimal 1, 2, 3 times. So it's going to be between the 3 and the 4. And then lastly, I want you to determine what is your final answer. Is it 3.456 or is it negative 3.456? What would your final answer be? All right, so I know when I have a negative times a positive, my answer is going to be negative. So different signs, answer is negative. And I'll go back up to that tic-tac-toe chart to show you. If it is a negative times a positive, your answer is negative. So final answer here, I need negative 3.456 or negative 3 and 456 thousandths. All right, one more we're going to do. Let's take a look at this one, and I'll help you set it up, and then I just want you to give me your final answer. So it's 2.45 or 2 and 45 hundredths times 35. Remember, your longest, not largest, your longest number goes on top. This is 3 digits, this is 2 digits, so I know that this number is going to go on top. So I'm going to put 2 and 45 hundredths times 35. Okay. All right, so go ahead and do your multiplying for me, and then don't forget to determine where your decimal goes. You have 2 numbers behind the decimal, so use that to help you determine where your decimal goes, and then decide if your answer is positive or negative. Go ahead and finish up this problem, and then type in your final answer. All right, so when you do this one, 5 times, you always start by multiplying this first number furthest to the right. Notice I did not line up decimals. So 5 times 5 is 25. There's the 5, carry the 2. 4 times 5 is 20. 20 plus 2 is 22. 2 times 5 is 10. 10 plus 2 is 12. Okay, put your placeholder here. Now you multiply the 3. 3 times 5 is 15. Carry the 1. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 plus 1 is 13. Carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. Okay, and again, I'm going to color code this just in case if you didn't have the exact same numbers here, please fix them, because this yellow row is what you get when you multiply everything by 5. This orange row is what you get when you multiply everything by 3. Okay, lastly, I need you to add it all up. So 5 plus 0 is 5. 2 plus 5 is 7. 2 plus 3 is 5. 1 plus 7 is 8. And then I need you to determine where your decimal goes. There are 2 numbers behind the decimal. So in your answer, move it 2 times to the left. So your decimal goes between the 5 and the 7. So you have 85 and 75 hundredths. And then check the sign of your answer. Positive times positive stays positive. So it is a positive 85 and 75 hundredths. All right, awesome job. Okay, We're not going to do that last one, so please make sure you have those 4 problems done. If you need to go back and rewatch some parts of the video to help remind you how to multiply or determine the sign of your answer, please feel free to do that. Again, as a reminder, use this tic-tac-toe chart to help you determine the sign of your answer, because that'll really help you remember that if the signs are the same, your answer is positive. Signs are different, your answer is going to be negative. Okay, so again, feel free to rewatch this video if you need to, or ask questions if you have them.